All right, we are on what used to be called on Fox the OG, the old anyway. The Ultimate Sports Network. This is Real Boxing Talk, and I'm not. I'm going to let them do it. This is just stupid. Okay. Anyhow, as you can tell, we normally talk about stuff before we start talking about stuff, and usually that permeates what we're going to talk about when we actually start talking about stuff. And I'm going to try very hard not to let that happen, but I'm sure it's going to happen anyway. So.
You're supposed to say, "I'm your host, Frank O.G. Gordon."
There, see, I was going to let you do that, let you have the satisfaction to do that, and there you go. So my new initials are now. Oh goodness gracious. Okay, all right. OG. Now I have to start talking like I was going to say Paul Simon, Billy Paul, and anyway, I do my Hayes impression.
OG. Gordon, it works.
You don't say it. See,
it works.
I told you.
Let me tell you, baby, it's been a nice ride.
We'll create a logo for your background too, Frank O.G. Gordon. I got you. Don't even worry about it. I got you.
He's got it.
Let me tell you, baby. Look, this is gonna be a sweet ride on the 9 to 5. All right.
Another career, Frank.
I don't have enough. Exactly. Well, I have enough jobs. I don't have any careers. But okay. On a serious note, we're going to take ourselves to the woodshed on this one. Well, mostly ourselves. John made a point the last time, and we kind of glossed over. We have made assumptions. We made an assumption last week that there was a fight that was happening over the weekend that wasn't really worth bothering about. And for good reason, because here's what we do. And I'm going to look at some of the things in the background of Mr. Farmer's background there. I see Mayweather Ortiz, Mayweather Guerrero, fights that we knew were going to happen, that were a big buildup. But come on, we weren't expecting the outcome to be any different than what it was. And I think that's where we went with Kambosos. And I'm going to even screw up his name. Kambosos Jr., George Kambosos Jr. Partly why I didn't talk about it was because I didn't want to mess up his name, because I didn't know enough. And we should have known with Oscar Valdez earlier this year, we should have known with various different things that there is a possibility of what we call an upset. And I know we mentioned Buster Douglas at one point in our lives. What we call an upset isn't an upset for the people involved in the fight. Just because we have a lineal version of this guy beat Lomachenko, so he's supposed to be this guy, supposed to be that guy, doesn't mean that the next guy can't actually perform. And we do that all the time. And we do it, and not just us, but everybody, because we are given the Vegas point of view. This is the line. Once the line is set, this is going to happen. And these things happen more often than not. Charles and I we were talking at one point about the Irad Ortiz Jr. factor in horse racing. He doesn't win every race. Sometimes for a few months it seemed like he did, but just because he's on the favorite and he's the favorite doesn't mean the favorite's going to win. Else there's no point in having the game. So, John, what did we miss here?
I alluded to it a few weeks ago. I think you kind of hit it,
when
Frank.
I say you, I meant him and I, not you. Obviously, you.
No, I didn't see this coming. Come on. We get so wrapped up in the last fight that we saw the guy. And that's what Teofimo was. He beat Lomachenko, like you said. And Kambosos Jr., not an OG at all, Frank, sorry. I saw him fight a couple of times, and he looked pretty good, but he didn't look like any danger for Lopez. But there were hints that something could happen, being that Kambosos kept saying that Teofimo had to cut a lot of weight. And the fight had been postponed numerous times. And you know how hard that has to be. Just think of it as an athlete. You're gearing up for a date, and then it gets postponed. And then you got another date, and it gets postponed. And it's always the story about Sonny Liston and Muhammad Ali, too, was before Ali mucked up his hernia, Liston was ready. He was primed and ready, had his whole body ready to go. And then when it got delayed, it messed him up, and he never could get to that point again. Not that it would have really mattered, I think, but still, that's the point, that a lot of times your training can get messed up because it's routine. So there were little things, but there wasn't enough of it that I thought that Kambosos could win. And then there was the other factor that we all know about, is there's a word called overconfidence. And that happens in sports. You're just so sure of yourself that you're too sure. I mean, I wrote an article and I said, okay, Lopez can hit, but we made him into King Kong.
Right.
And we made him into, he had 12 knockouts in 16 fights. That's not 16 out of 16. You know, he wasn't knocking out everybody like Golovkin was once, or like Mike Tyson when he was in his prime. Tyson, you watched him just to see him score a knockout because if he didn't get it, you were disappointed.
Right. Really disappointed.
Lopez hits hard, and he's a big guy for lightweight. You see, he'll probably be a welterweight soon. He's not God. And he can be beat. And he did everything wrong in that fight. And we're going to talk about that, so I'm not going to jump ahead. But so there was, answering your question, Frank, there were these little things going on. Oh, and then I got to say this about Kambosos. See, unlike Lopez, who stopped training during all these postponements, he kept training. Somehow he didn't get overtrained. But that man was that old story that I love. He was so determined. And the determination can only take you so far. We all know that. Hell, if that was the case, we'd probably all be millionaires by now, right? Just that determination, because we're trying. But this guy was obsessed. He didn't go home, from what I read. He stayed near the gym. He hadn't seen his family for months. He kind of did like Usyk did against Joshua. And then what did he do? He executed. And when Lopez says, I'm going to come out and knock you out in the first round, he said, bring it on. I'll be ready for you. I might knock you down. And he did. So he as far as I'm concerned, you know, I wrote this, lost Teofimo, that's it, get over yourself. It's true. Kambosos did a number on him and deserves all the credit. But again, circling back, Frank, there were signs, but we just didn't think that it would be enough. 13-1 favorite Lopez was.
Right.
It wasn't supposed to happen, but in sports, these things happen.
Well, Charles, is it that we give too much credence to the one victory? Or maybe there's reason now we go back and go, maybe Lomachenko has a point of why he didn't do what he did, or blah, blah, blah. I mean, do we just go, wait a second, why didn't we see this? Or why didn't we think this? What were we missing?
I don't know if it's about missing anything. I mean, I think you got to really look at it, as John mentioned, about the way you view things in boxing, and you always look at the last fight. And Lopez's last fight was monumental. It wasn't just a nice win; it was monumental. Right. You stop, or you end up defeating, you know, a guy that was considered pound for pound, and his whole resume was very impressive. You know, a large amateur career, not a lot of professional box bouts, and he was getting it done, and he seemed almost unstoppable. And you were the person that stopped him, right? You're the guy that took him down, and at that point, then it's easy just to go, well, if you can beat, you know, Lomachenko, hell, who can touch you? I mean, just what it was, because Lomachenko was almost like, we knew he wasn't invincible, but we knew he got a lot of credit from a lot of people, which he deserved. I mean, he take nothing from him. He earned it. So the man that beat the man, sit next to the man, so when you look at it that way, he took down the top guy, and it stuck in your head. And then Lopez was like, I'm going to fight, but he wasn't really busy. In fact, I think one of the major things, one thing we missed, and I knew it was a little long, but I didn't know how long it was, the 13-month inactivity, right? 13 months of inactivity. That goes a long way. I don't care who you are. 13 months of inactivity because of COVID and whatever. And then you come off this probably might have been Lopez is one of his greatest, might have been the greatest fight of his career, to take down Lomachenko, and now you got to go back in. So I think that played a large part. Say what you want to, and you mentioned, it was mentioned about overconfidence. Saw this guy coming up, like, okay, yeah, he's all right, but I beat Lomachenko. You know what I'm saying? I mean, really, I beat the man. And when you had that mindset, I beat the man, I was going to fight him again. Who is this guy? He's not getting in my way. And that can go a long way with that. So I think that's a major factor. If we missed anything, it was really taking it seriously or really understanding or taking a serious look at 13 months of inactivity. And now you coming in here saying I can just walk in and just get it done.
Well, John, I'm going to flip genres here and flip ideas. When James Bond goes to the moon and Moonraker and saves the world, how does he come back and fight Scaramanga again? I mean, you've gone to the mountaintop. You've done all that you can do. You saved the world from the moon. And now we got a little drug dealer over here in Chile we got to deal with. I mean, is that like beating Lomachenko? I beat Lomachenko. We'll use the Buster Douglas example. I beat Mike Tyson. What else do I have to do? Do I even, and again, I'm not going to put words in Buster's mouth. There are a lot of other things that happen. They're like, then what do I do now? How do I get into the next thing? How do I get myself geared up for, I did the unthinkable. Now I have to do the thinkable. Well, I don't want to think about it. Is that part of what it was? Or is it that, are we giving less credit to Kambosos than we should?
Well, it might have been if Kambosos was real respectful, but he riled up Lopez. He actually, like I like to say, that let the sleeping dogs lie. Don't wake up the sleeping dog. He woke up the dog in Lopez. He was putting him down, constantly insulting his family. He had him all fired up. So maybe if he had been respectful and acting like he was stunned to be in the same room with him, right, Lopez would have went, all I got to do is just breathe on this guy and he'll fall over. But he got him more fired up because Kambosos is a very, I'd say, I don't want to say arrogant, but he's got a lot of belief in himself. I have a friend who said the guy is surly, edgy. He's not somebody. He's not easy to talk to. He's not the nicest guy in the world, but that's outside the ring, whatever. But I think he had pumped up Lopez. So normally I would say yes, you have a point, but I think Lopez was ready. I think Charles was right about the inactivity. That was something that hurt. Some of it wasn't his fault. The postponements were just weird postponements with Triller and all these weird, trying to get off the ground and all that, whatever that company's name. That's not his fault. I really believe that he didn't think Kambosos was as good as he is, and he thought he was better because he beat Lomachenko. I think you're right on about that. It's like you beat the god, you beat the man, you beat the number one guy. There's no way this Aussie, who's probably been fighting kangaroos all his life, could beat me. I mean, there's just no way. So I could see where that could happen. It happened to the greatest. He fought Kenny Norton the first time. He got, this ex-Marine, he can't. So what did he do? He trained in the parking lot, from reporter to reporter, and it cost him. And so it's just another example of where you can get wrapped up in your own press clippings. And then I think his father is a real detriment. I do. I think his father, we probably talk about this in a minute, but just a little hint, his father gave him terrible advice in the corner. And that didn't help him. But back to what happened before, I think he was ready. I mean, if you saw the fight, he barely put his hand, he had his hands down at his waist a lot of the time. It's like, I haven't ever seen him fight like that. He was like, he wanted the knockout so bad because he had told everybody, put money on a knockout. He was just ready to he didn't think Kambosos was going to hit him, hurt him. And we had talked about how in sparring, he had been knocked down and boom, first round, there he goes. And I thought about Tyson Douglas. I thought about before Tyson fought Douglas, he got knocked down in sparring and I went, I started deleting my headline right there. I went, this is it going to go. So, I mean, in a way, it's very interesting, but in a way, it's why I love sports. One of the reasons is you're never really 100% sure. You think you are, and a lot of times you're going, yep. Then other times and that's happened a few times this year, and that's good.
Well, Charles, and I was going to say, there are a couple things that have happened in the last week that we'll use the Ohio State reference for that Ohio State losing football to Michigan. Whoa, that wasn't supposed to happen. Whatever records now, Ohio State's a better team. And then last night, Ohio State basketball beating Duke, who just beat Gonzaga. You got to play the game. You've got to show up and play the game. And is this simply a fact that maybe, just maybe, somebody decided to play and somebody thought about playing as the game was happening?
I mean, I can see that. But, I mean, the one thing that nobody's going to talk about, and there's no way to really prove it. until we get moving forward in the future, right? See how things pan out. But the one thing you never know about effort, as you said, you're a top guy, and a team that's maybe not on the same level decides to give their best effort, which I love. I've always said that. I love the underdog, you know, unless there's always going to be somebody bigger than you. I tell my nephew playing ball and everything like that, different kids and people, that it's always going to be somebody better than you, stronger than you, more athletic than you. But the question is, if you put your best effort and they have an off night, anything is possible. Sometimes you're just going to get beat because they're just better than you. Athletically, they're more gifted than you. But one night or a couple nights, you just never know. If they don't bring their best effort and you show that you can outplay them that night, all you need is one night. And I think the one thing we have to look at is, to me right now, and I don't know enough about his career, but I will continue to watch it. But with Kambosos, right, Kambosos Jr., it's like this. Right now, that was the fight of his life. He fought the fight of his life. Right. Nobody knew it. Nobody saw it. You can say what you want to, but he did everything right. He did everything right. That what I was going to say. I know we get into it more, but I'm going to throw it out there now because before we get into specifics, is this fight right here. When I thought about it, looked at it again, I was like, damn, this is Lopez versus Lomachenko.
No way, yeah.
Yeah, when you think about it, somebody up, guy trying to come back.
Ironic, isn't it?
Yeah, he come back and then he trying everything to do to get it at the end. And I'm like, you know, is this deja vu? You know, you like, so yeah, I mean, when you really look at the overall spectrum of it, that's the first thing came to my mind. I'm like, okay, well, now you know how I feel. But Kambosos Jr., I mean, he fought his tail off and he was ready that night. We don't know what's gonna happen down the line, but that night was his night.
Well, as we continue on the Rolly Massimino show, we understand that it's a possibility when it's a possibility. Or I was going to say the Jim Valvano show, but we've got V-Week going all over the place. But the idea being that if you put yourself in the arena, you got a chance. Even if no one else gives you a chance except for John Gloss over, okay, give it a little bit of a shot. But this is what's going on. Now, what does that mean for this weekend? Where's it this week? I might lose my dates here. We've got Jojo Diaz, who, by all accounts, by the public, what do you think, John?
He's a 5-1 underdog. Perfect, because I'm writing an article about it right now. Yeah, you know me, I love angles, and I talked to him years ago, and he was a baby-faced kid from LA who wanted to be play shortstop for the Dodgers. He wasn't tall enough. He's only 5'6", right? And he metamorphosized. And I ended up asking this question: what happened to you? You know, you were just baby faced, and then you went to a blonde. Then now he looks like a dead end kid.
Right.
And yeah, you can tell I'm already writing it in my head. And I asked him that question. I said, was it just you, or was it just boxing? Did you evolve? And he said he evolved. It was just a natural evolvement because boxing is brutal, and it in a way made him more. He's a tough little guy, but he's tougher now than ever. But he is facing one gifted kid in Devin Haney, 23 years old, and Haney's got all the skills. The reason it's a bit compelling is because what happened to Haney late in the fight against Linares. If you remember, he got buzzed a couple of times. His legs went haywire. He held on like he was slow dancing with Linares, would not let go. And I mean, that was good that he did that. A lot of fighters never learn how to hold on when they're hurt, and he did. And so that makes it more compelling. But Diaz is not a big puncher, but he's a dog. He's a gritty dog. So 5-1, more 3-1, I think. Haney the favorite. But the Diaz surprise? Oh, yes. Especially if he's like Kambosos, superbly motivated. He seems to be, but I saw he was who, when I told you guys before we started, he was who I went to see fight because I've always followed his career in LA. And he fought in Javier, I can't remember who, I'm not even say his name. He was losing. And he's a gritty dude. I mean, he gets gritty and nasty and dirty. He is a dog now. He gets you into a physical fight, even though he's not super strong or anything. He makes you fight his fight. So if he can get Haney out of his fight plan, then it's possible. But again, I said Haney is gifted, and he's got all the skills, and so he should be the favorite. But I'll just say, remember what happened last weekend. So, you never know.
Charles, what I'm seeing here, and I'm looking back in time as well, what I'm seeing here is that everybody, we say, what's going on now? You've lost a fight, your career is over. Or you've done this, you've done that, or whatever. And we look at the guy who has the unblemished record as the guy that's supposed to be able to get the job done. And the guy who doesn't have the unblemished record or isn't the name guy, we don't give him enough credit to even be able to get in the ring and do anything. Again, we'll go back to Oscar Valdez. You know, the assumption was Oscar Valdez was the lesser part of that matchup. So, oh well. Now, we can do that with a lot of different people, I'm assuming. But, like, this guy isn't supposed to, he's not the one we're talking about. So, why do we care? Is there something that's going on here? Now, we've talked about Jojo Diaz, but I haven't heard a lot of buzz about Jojo Diaz in the last couple of years in general. Is this another, I hate to say it, call it an upset because we're starting to see this. Usyk was an upset, but was it? You know, that's where we're going. You know, was Deontay Wilder, was he being upset by Fury the first time? Or is it because, you know, well, matchups make matchups and styles make fights and all that stuff. We get to the point where we start to see the fight for the fight instead of the fight for the build-up and for the buzz. So what do we see here? Is this a fight that's worth watching again? Or is it, no, it's just a trend. It's nothing worth worrying about.
Yeah, I mean, it might be a trend, but it is something worth worrying about because, you know, Devin Haney is trying to prove something, right? He's still young, and, you know, we saw his last fight. He had a little trouble, or at least he had some adversity he had to face. So he is clearly not still proven, because there's a lot of people in that area where he's fighting that he's ready, or nobody's really stepped out and says, I'm the guy. A lot of people are talking it, but they're still trying in that proof phase until they get to the marquee matchups. So with that being said, Devin Haney is still on a proof positive mission to show you how really good he is. A lot of talk and, I'll fight him, and all you got to do is sign the contract. We're hearing a lot of that, but we're not seeing the contract being signed. Anyway, right. I digress. But from the standpoint of, so Devin Haney is like, okay, Jojo Diaz is a busy fighter. He's been around. Yet the one thing why I think this is a real interesting fight, I'm not going to call for an upset, but Jojo Diaz has been in the ring, okay? Jojo Diaz has been through the wars, okay? Jojo Diaz fought Gary Russell Jr., and it's probably one of the most busiest and the most entertaining fights you want to see. Jojo Diaz gave all he had, but it wasn't enough. You know, Gary Russell Jr. was really busy, went in there, and for all the effort that Jojo Diaz was given, it wasn't good enough. But he flips side and turns around and goes over and fights Tevin Farmer. Tevin Farmer's coming in like he's, you know, be all ready and everything.
Like his name is Farmer or something.
Yeah, something like that, yeah. He may not have been his best performance. He didn't come in ready, and Jojo Diaz took advantage of it. He wasn't as busy as he needed to be, Tevin Farmer I'm speaking about, and Jojo Diaz got it done. So with all that being said, that in mind, taking that in and putting that in perspective, now you come into a fight against a young kid that's trying to prove the world that he's top notch. You know, he's the guy that deserves to put some spec on his name, as they like to say. You know, put some respect on his name. And with that being said, that's what makes for a great matchup. Because now, Devin Haney, you keep moving up the ladder. You say, yeah, I'm ready. But you're against a guy that's been against the best. And if Haney, that is, gets careless, it could be very interesting. Even though Jojo Diaz may not have all the power that people believe, sometimes it's not about the power, it's about combinations. And then after a while, combinations and things can wear down on you. He's coming to the body. Jojo Diaz is a bulldog. He's a forward dude. He's coming forward. You're going to keep hitting him, and he's going to keep coming until he stops him. And that's something that we have to ask ourselves. Is Devin Haney going to be comfortable in receiving that? Which means you're going to box, move around, stay out the way. But at some point, you got to come to the middle of the circle And I think that's why it remains. It's going to be an interesting fight, at least early on, until, if he does it, until Haney figures Jojo Diaz out.
John, we've talked a couple of times about, Canelo had to face Mayweather and learn from Mayweather to become Canelo. And that's a loss that is acceptable. But a lot of times now, we don't have acceptable losses. Remember, the Celtics, the Lakers had to beat the Celtics. The Blazers had to beat the Lakers. The Bulls had to beat. You had to overcome what was in front of you and maybe get beat down a couple of times first. And with Jojo Diaz, Charles made a great point. The Gary Russell Jr. fight, losing that fight may have been one of the best things for his career. You know what you're up against now, and now you know how you have to come back. But if you've never faced that adversity before, you mentioned, when do you learn how to hold? When do you react when you're hurt? If you've never been hurt before, how do you do these things? So is this a perfect storm? And maybe we're overblowing it because of what just happened. This is a perfect storm where Jojo Diaz is in the right spot at the right time, and go find a betting window and put your $10 down and get 30 back.
Logic still seems, in my mind, Haney is definitely
logic.
Okay. Well, my gut is telling me. My gut says too that it agrees with the logic that Haney is still the favorite and should be. I wouldn't advise anybody to necessarily put money on Diaz, but I would look for this. Diaz, I would think, and Charles is right too, because he is a lunch pail dog. I mean, and I think what he's probably going to do is first few rounds early, he's going to work on the body. He's going to try to hit Haney to slow him down because we know how fast Haney is. If he's successful and he starts slowing Haney down, then the upset is definitely possible because Diaz works. He can work in spurts, and he could surprise Haney, especially if he slows him down. And he's a strong little dude. I mean, he is a bulldog. He's not the guy that I saw 5 years ago. He was more a boxer. Now he's not a puncher, but he's a gritty boxer puncher now. He wants to get in your chest and just beat you up, even though he's not going to knock you into tomorrow with one punch. He's just going to pound on you, So if Haney, it's almost similar in the sense that if Haney's a little off and Diaz has his A game right there at his A game, it definitely could happen. I just think Haney is more gifted, and it's just, Charles. It's what Charles said. The genius down there below me that you only have what you have. You're gonna face somebody who's better than you in some respects, but if you have a little bit, maybe I don't want to say Haney doesn't have any heart because he obviously does, but if you have a little bit more, you might be able to beat the guy who's better. I'm sure we've faced that. I don't know how many times I played basketball against guys who were better, but I would not stop. Sometimes I'd get fortunate and I do something and I'd be like, wow. So it could happen but it's unlikely just because Haney is trying to show you, all of us, how good he is. But then he might be trying to show you too much and get clipped. See, so this is why boxing is so great, because you've got all these possibilities that could happen. But back to what you said, Frank, I still think Haney's a favorite. I'd still pick Haney to win, but qualified with all those other things we've been saying about Jojo, because Jojo is feeling disrespected, just like Kambosos.
Right.
And he's like, fine, make me the underdog. And you're going about Gary Russell, good one. I think he learned a lot in that fight. That's the only fight he's lost. People forget that. Right. He's only lost to Gary Russell. No disgrace, just losing to Gary Russell. Haney obviously hasn't lost. And he hasn't really, he had a draw, but there was a lot of stuff going on with his weight, and he had a DUI, and there were some personal things going on. I would think that he just fought in the summer. He is on point. So this is his best time in his career to do this. It's just going to depend. He's might need a little help from Haney, but that's what makes this an intriguing fight. I've been talking about this fight for weeks. It seems like nobody else is. I'm sure there's nothing going on there in Vegas about it, Frank, but it is it's an old-fashioned matchup between two really good fighters.
Well, now, Charles, we teased this a little bit, so let's go back to it. Because now we've taken this broad stroke view of things, let's get a little bit more into what actually happened with the Kambosos fight. What actually happened? Why did it happen this way? Let's go from the Kambosos point of view.
Well, I mean, like you said, Kambosos had a plan, right? And granted, there's a lot of talk and everything about, well, I'm going to knock you out and all other stuff, you know, from Lopez as well. But Kambosos had a plan. And what he did is he executed that plan in the first round, where Lopez might have been a little bit more over anxious, more overzealous, taking more chances in the first round. He got knocked down. And Kambosos was like, I told you. So you come in, it's like anything else. If you come in wild and not playing inside yourself in any sport, it's like tennis or whatever. You playing overzealous and you leaving the door open for somebody, an opportunity. They can knock you down. They can take that point. They can do whatever to take advantage of you being over aggressive, what I like to call it. So I think that's what it was. So as we mentioned earlier, he knocked you down in the first round. Then it began. Because now it's like you're behind.
Right.
We know that 10-8 round, 10-9, 10-9. Okay, we worked through that. 10-8, first round, ask Keith Thurman. 10-8, everybody that you know, Lomachenko. 10-8, everybody knows that that's the worst. The two numbers you don't want to hear, or two scenarios. 10-8, 10-7 in boxing.
Marquez 10-4, right?
Yeah. You never want to hear that, 10-8, 10-7 rounds, because that means that the person did a lot more than you did, and they put you in a position where now you're behind. And simply put, and I'll get off this and let John continue to elaborate, is the factor that 10-8 coming out the box, basically, because you got knocked down, now you're behind. Now you're playing catch up. I don't care how many belts you won and all that, how I beat Lomachenko and all that, that means nothing, because now you're in the position that he was in, you're behind, and you got to come back.
And that's a perfect way to carry on, John. Now we see that Lopez is like, oh, crap. What did he do or what didn't he do or what could he have done to dig out of that hole? See,
when I was watching it, it didn't seem like, oh, crap. He says, I'm just going to knock him out. I don't care. Right. And this is where his father should have said, cool your jets, keep your hands up, work your jabs, stop trying to knock the guy out. You'll knock him out. Just work your fight like you. Don't be walking in there with your chin up in the air. Because he also got buzzed at the end of the fourth or fifth round, I think. I remember his legs getting buckled again. So, and that was just because he was walking in so recklessly. But he needs somebody that he'll listen to a little bit in his corner other than himself, because he rallied later in the fight, and I think that was just because of his talent. We'll talk about that. And he's obviously got a huge heart, Lopez. But the instructions were terrible, and he didn't think to himself, like I put my headline, one of my lines in my article was, you would think after getting knocked down in the first round, that would be your wake-up call, like, whoa, this guy,
again. Yeah,
this guy really came to win. You know me, I love my Rocky stuff. When Paulo's trainer said, hey, this guy didn't think it's a show, he thinks it's a fight. And that's perfect for that, because he needed somebody to really stick it to him. And I always bring up Virgil Hunter, because I'll never forget when Andre Ward got knocked down. I know I talk about him every week, but he got knocked down by Sergey Kovalev in the fight. Charles was there. And Virgil Hunter, who's known Andre since he was 7 years old, and he's like a son, he didn't pussyfoot around at all. I mean, he was basically like, what are you doing? We talked about this. What are you doing? And he didn't say, oh, well, you had a great round. And when he was winning, when he was losing, he'd say he was winning, like Teofimo Sr.
Yeah.
He told him, you got to start working the body. You got to do this. You can do it. He kept telling him, you can do it. I mean, it was one of the best corner speeches I ever heard. Hell, I wanted to go fight after I won. It was that good. And I talked to Virgil about it later. He goes, I don't know. It just, came from wherever. Right. And he knows how to motivate. Teofimo Sr. was saying, he's losing rounds. Oh, you won that round. No. So the sad thing about Teofimo Lopez, the takeover, is that his career could get mangled because of that kind of stuff.
Right.
He got a really bad cut over his left eye, really bad. So the next time he fights, someone's going to be targeting it.
Right.
So that could have a real adverse effect on his career. And I blame his father for a lot of it, but I also blame Teofimo. He's a grown-up man now. He's 24. He's not 14. He has to be able to see this. And he needs, this is why my article I said, get real. He needs somebody to say, somebody who's honest. Maybe his wife will. I heard his wife is a straight shooter. To say, okay, man, nope. Don't be telling everybody you won 10 out of 12 rounds. Come on, you look like a sore loser. That you did not win 10 out of 12 rounds. Fighters tend to think sometimes if they're the ones moving forward, they win rounds. No, not when you're getting hit. Look at and Kambosos said it right perfectly. I mean, he beat him again at the end. He said, look at your face. After he said, another one. So he needs to get real, Teofimo. He's still got a lot of talent. He's young, but I'm not going to say this was the best thing that ever happened to him, guys, because he took a pounding. I mean, his face was his nose, his eye. I mean, he looked like hell. And then the last thing, real fast, I went too long here, is that Kambosos really showed a chin. You haven't said anything about that. I mean, he got hit with some shots were knocking everybody out. Well, at least 12 out of 16. And he wobbled and he went down. And that was Lopez's best chance, was in the 10th, because Kambosos was hurt. Kambosos Jr. He was hurt. But Lopez didn't go for it totally because he didn't want to get hit with that right hand.
Right.
So you can't blame him there. But yeah, it was really as Golovkin would say, a big drama show, and that's what made it so good.
Well, when we get to the point of where do we look from here, and we've been doing this now this is year 3, if I'm not mistaken. There are a lot. We've been able to look at this historically in the context of what we're doing in the time frame. Charles, as we're looking at things now, and I know the pandemic screwed stuff up, but is this the time where you don't get a second chance? How many guys have we talked about that were undefeated or were major players in the last 3 years have got a second chance? I know Keith Thurman got a second chance and Sean Porter got a second chance. How many other guys have we given a second chance to that they've actually been able to capitalize on it? That it wasn't a draw or something like that. You know, Wilder Fury was a draw. So, okay, that's a second chance. But I'm just thinking off the top of my head, is it now that you better shine when you have a chance to shine, because you've gone from the top back to the middle of the pack again. You got to crawl your way back up, and we're not letting you crawl.
Yeah, but the thing with Lopez, though, he was on top of the mountain, right? He did the unthinkable.
Right. He did the unthinkable, right?
Yeah, if he had lost to somebody or he had not, let's just say this, he had not climbed the mountain and secured the belts, I mean, then you would go, you throw him back in the pile and go, I don't know how you're going to make it up. He got surprised. He got beat by Kambosos. But the fact that he beat Lomachenko still gives him validity, I think, in a lot of ways. So it's not going to come off where he's going to get maybe the next shot, because now the wild dogs, or the hungry, ravenous dogs, are coming after
Kambosos, right?
Because they believe that they can get him easily. They like, well, you had a bad night, but he's not that good. So when you look at it, you're going to have the winner of Devin Haney wins, Danny Haney and JoJo Diaz. Definitely Devin Haney wants that. Tank Davis would love to jump in there.
Right.
Hell, even Lomachenko. You know what?
Right.
Jump back and get something that really was mine in the first place. I told y'all much. It's all kind of stuff. So it's like the prey. You know, you're looking at all of these wild predators.
Roll the beast at the water in the hole, right?
Yeah. Do you just see what happened? He just knocked that line down. I mean, damn, the rabbit got the gun. But you look at it and you just see that. But while you want to give Kambosos his love for what he did, now there are other predators that are saying, other opponents that would say, yeah, you might have did that night, but you basically did my work for me. I can get you. I didn't know if I can get Teofimo on a good day, but I know I can get you. Yeah, kind of when you look at how people are looking at in the welterweight division at Ugas. You know, it's kind of looking at that way too. You have all these belts, and it's like, who the hell wouldn't want to fight him? I mean, you had names come out like even Shakur Stevenson said, I'll fight you. You know, like it's like, you know, that's way up where he's trying to go up.
Fight everybody.
It's like, yeah, I mean, yeah, but it's just the premise of, if you see an opportunity, you get yourself ready. Because, I mean, we've seen it from Roy Jones versus John Ruiz, something that nobody expects. I know I can beat you. I think I can beat you. So, yeah, let's go for it. So, unfortunately for Kambosos, because I'm understanding, I might be wrong, that they're saying that Teofimo not really interested in a rematch because he want to go up. And it's like, y'all, y'all gonna cheat me anyway. I won. And, when your dad's telling you won all the rounds and you start believing it, all good. And the referee mistakenly.
Right.
So with all that being said, he's like, well, hell with it. One, because the belts, he's already done it. It'd be cool to go back, but you can't take away what he already had.
Right.
And maybe he thinks deep down inside, as I get off this not too far in the head, maybe he thinks, hell, let me move up and I think I can get that Josh Taylor. And I think I can do it easily. So I won this one. Let me go back to another undisputed, right? So if I go, let's go one thing. Okay, you got it. Cool. Go with it. I'm not even worried about it. I'm just going to go over here and knock this month out, and I'm going to be undisputed again. Now, who next? So it's weird how that goes, but yeah, to answer your question, I think there's a number of people that are going to be knocking on the door of Kambosos because they think, some of them think it's going to be an easy move to become a with 3 belts, 4, how many belts he has, easy pickings. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops.
There is the Qantas. Is that the Australian airline now? There were a ton of people on Qantas lining up to get to Jeff Horn after he beat Pacquiao. So, right, we understand how that works out. It's oh, really? Okay, let's go. Now, it's funny that you mention it that way because that's kind of how are we going to get to the next guy? How are we going to get to him? Okay, I'm sure you mentioned Ugas. I think Roberto Duran said he wanted to fight Ugas. I mean, there are people coming out of the woodwork that said, I'll get this guy. So, yeah, and it doesn't mean that he's a soft touch, but it's like he's a lot softer touch than the other people we were going to have to get. So that's not a bad thing. Now, you mentioned a few other people, John, as we look at this mix, and we've been talking about this for the last few years, that in this, from the 135 to 147, around in that range, there are a ton of people that we can throw in the mix here. And it all looks like most of them look like they can carry the weight up or down. So and I know we do this, who's the champ and who's the king and all that stuff. And I know we get a little carried away with it. But when we start looking at this, who can take care of business? And we mentioned one of them that obviously didn't take care of business. Who can take care of business I don't know if the easiest but the best right now that you think? Let's just name one guy you think, when this all shakes out, if it was done the way we thought it should be done, this guy's going to be up standing on top.
Lightweight, junior welterweight, which
if we put them all in one arena and said, okay, we're going to fight at a catchweight of 140 from 147 down to 135. Who's going to be?
Well, if it's 140, Josh Taylor. I don't think Teofimo beats him. I don't. I think Josh Taylor is a tough guy from Wales, and he's a Kambosos. He's another guy like that, and
right.
That would not be fun for Teofimo, no matter what he thinks. Oh well, I had to cut weight. I should weigh 140. Fine, but that would turn into a war. Because Josh Taylor likes wars,
right?
So that would be a can't miss fight. But he's that good, I think. Gervonta Davis might be underrated. Mm-hmm. He's got a big fight coming this Sunday where he could lose,
right,
against the Pitbull. So we've got another one. But I don't think he really gets the credit he deserves because people say he's not fighting anybody. Well, he was going to fight some guy, Rami or whatever. And now he's fighting Cruz, I think, and the Pitbull is damn good. Ryan Garcia hasn't been mentioned because of the mental issues or whatever's going on with him and then the hand injury. He's really talented. I mean, he's not proven, though, yet, but he's very talented. So it's hard to say who really is the top guy. I mean, if you go up to welterweight, it's obvious it's between two guys up there. And right now, Terrence is, to me, the top guy because he just fought. He beat Sean Porter. Errol Spence, we don't know. He's a mystery. So talent-wise, I would love to see Josh Taylor and Terrence Crawford. That was one that was being talked about. But now Teofimo's talking about fighting Josh Taylor. And I don't know. He can't do it that quickly because of his eye.
Right.
You know, his father said February. His father said February. I'm like, what? You can't get back in there that soon after that cut. That would be the summer. Dad is well. So there isn't really anyone, I don't think, that you can say, oh, he's 100%. Other than, well, no one. If you go welterweight, junior welterweight, lightweight, there isn't anybody to me who's head and shoulders above everyone. You've just got a cluster of really good, talented fighters. I'd say this right now. Here you go. If Kambosos ends up now, okay, wait, let me go back a step. Lomachenko is fighting here in 2 weeks. Let's not forget.
Right.
He's fighting Richard Comey, who
who was there.
Rounds. And he'll probably be there because Comey and him are buds. So Teofimo will probably be there. Lomachenko most likely will win that fight. He'll want to fight Kambosos. And I'll say it right now. He'd beat him. He'd beat him. He would. He's got that he could beat him. He could win a decision over him or something. But what makes it so good, again, I don't want to say it's parody like the NFL. You know, the NFL every week we're like, how did that happen? You know, you're like, it's not parody because a lot of these guys are really good. But none of them really is, unless you're comparing them like one or two. I mean, who's better, Errol Spence or Terrence Crawford, right? So it's really those two. Maybe Terrence a little edge. Maybe. Don't forget about how tough Errol Spence is. Then you go to 140, you got Josh Taylor. Who else you got? No, the Rougarou hasn't been fighting for a while, so I don't know what he fought a hell of a fight against Josh Taylor. I don't know what's going on. His career's kind of in a standstill right now. But then you drop down to 135 and you got Ryan Garcia. Well, you got Gervonta at 140, but he can fight at 135.
Right. And
you got Ryan Garcia, then you got Devin Haney. So there's all these guys, and they're all saying, I'm the best. Well, hopefully they all fight at some point, and then we find out who's the best on that night. And then in a year or two or three, welterweight and junior middleweight will be Boots. He's the head and shoulders guy. I got to throw that in there. And then Charles's guy is also the head and shoulders guy. Well, I like him a lot too, Shakur. He's got the talent. Those two guys, remember we said this, they're the takeovers as far as I'm concerned. They got the ability to beat all of those guys at some point, I think. They got that much talent.
Well, Charles that was a mouthful. Now, as we look at that, though, there are a couple things that stand out from what he said. Let's look at Richard Comey getting a shot at Lomachenko, because what we just said was you don't get another shot. Remember, if we had this conversation a couple of years ago, Richard Comey was right there in that conversation as well, correct? So, and I don't know, and correct me if I'm wrong, what has he done to get back there other than just go through the grind? So maybe that's what it is. Now, is that another guy in the mix? You know, there are a lot of people we're talking about that maybe this is, maybe that, maybe the winner of the Kell Brook Amir Khan fight. But you look at, I know I had to throw that in there, but you look at, there are people that we've considered washed up that maybe aren't washed up. There's so many people in there.
The winner of Kell Brook and Amir Khan gets to fight Adrian Broner.
Okay. There you go.
And Broner will win those fights.
And that will happen in 2027, right? But there are these things that, you know, there are a lot of people there. And again, if Richard Schaefer, whomever wants to contact us and say, we'll help put it together, you can back to back these things and get it going. And in a year, be able to winnow it down to like, we can come up with an answer. Yeah, maybe we don't want to come up with an answer. Maybe that's the thing. But I think that is what's going on, is that we're looking at, again, Richard Comey. That's not a bad guy that's out there. And I'm sure we could just off the top of our heads come up with about 4 or 5 other guys that we could put in there and mix in there that are like, hey, he lost to this guy, but it's not like he was that bad, you know? And then we've got these guys, as John mentioned, that are in that mix within those 3 weight classes. So I'm going to put it to you the same way. Who is you might come up with 3 or 4 guys, like John did. But if you looked at it and said, if we were to put these all into one boilerplate, who ends up being the one you go, I think at the end of the day, in one tournament, this is the guy that ends up being the champion.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go back like John had it, but I'm going to go back with sections. And I'm going to say this. I'm going to say Gervonta Tank Davis I would choose him particularly at 135, because the one thing he shows you that he has power, and with my boy Leo Santa Cruz, I love dearly, he was just too much. He was too much. And I think with some of the other guys, he'll be too much too. So if Devin Haney stays at 135, can you handle that pressure coming up on you? You know what I'm saying? So you look at that too. And
ouch.
The thing too with, I mean, and Lomachenko is going to kind of stay safe. So Lomachenko knows I'm not trying to lose again and put myself in that position.
Right.
You mentioned about Commey, he's going to be ready this time. So it's like, okay, I can't come in here half-assed and I got.
This is it for him.
Right,
yeah,
right.
Right,
so he's
right.
going to be ready to go. But I think Tank Davis, because of that size and the power and knockout, he would be ready. And it would take somebody that would have a nice, they got to be a nice boxer. And they got to be able to keep him off of him. Because you remember, Santa Cruz for a while was boxing his butt off. But you got to be able to sting him. And I'm not sure how many people will have that ability and didn't have a complete plan at 135. So that's why I'm going to say Tank Davis at 135, right? And I love to see Tank Davis at 140 versus, Taylor. But I think that's where Taylor will have a little bit maybe of maybe an advantage because he's bigger, he can move, he can box, and he can cause Tank Davis a little problems. And Tank has been known to maybe take chances.
Right.
If the power doesn't go up, right, which you like it should, the one from 135 to 140, that's the other thing. So I think that there too. Then I'm gonna drop down to 135, and I'm gonna say if he ever gets there, I think Shakur Stevenson is the guy. And I say that because of the fact that the possibilities at 135. I mean, Tank Davis would be a major issue and a big problem, but that's years down the road. And Shakur says, I'm okay.
We'll not cross in the night.
Right. Yeah, I'm not doing that right now. I'm good. I don't have a problem to tell you. I don't need to see that drama in my life. But if you want to bring up, the Devin Haney's, right? You want to bring that to the table. If you want to bring in somebody like a JoJo Diaz, right? Oscar Valdez wants none of that. We know that. Even Lomachenko, he's like, you know what? Yeah, because I don't think you're the guy you are that you used to be. Right. So at 130, coming up at 135, I think Shakur is getting stronger and he's going to be fine. You keep moving up, whatever, I'm not sure. But even Shakur is like, I'll fight Gary Russell Jr. It's like anybody at that level, his skills can take him to another set. We saw in this last fight what he can do against a guy that was a bona fide champion. So you're like, you in my wheelhouse, I'm good with that. There are a few things that were causing problems, but he's really specified. So those two guys, I would say, I didn't really touch on 147 because I think that's still a free-for-all. I mean, I like Boots, but like I told you before, I want to see Boots. We talk about the main two guys, right? We talked about Crawford and and Spence, which is fine. So if that doesn't happen, jump in there with Ugas, bro. Don't get that Ugas. Get that Ugas in your life. Or like I said before, get the Ugas in your life, or just get that Virgil Ortiz in your life. And that might be too much of a risk because you lose or you don't get the shot you're looking for.
Right.
That's how I look at that there. I want to see him. I would prefer Boots Ennis versus Ugas. I think it's perfect. It's what it gives him a little bit more of a, that opportunity to play with the big dogs if he wins that fight, right? Because this is the guy that shut down Pacquiao, sent him on his way on his Fair Word tour. Everybody wanted to do it. He got the shot. He did it. So with Boots Ennis, his opportunity to do that, to play with the big dogs. So with all those scenarios, those are the three guys that I would mention. Like I said, when you look about Gervonta because of his size and how dangerous he can be at 135 or even 135. And then also, or if he goes to 140, then I'll bring up Shakur Stevenson against some of the other guys. And like I said, Boots Ennis has a great opportunity to really make a difference and show how really good he is. So those are the guys. Not to take away from Devin Haney. I like Devin Haney. But something about Devin Haney, talk real well and a lot of stuff I need to see more. And my last point on this is, I know they were young, but I went back and watched Devin Haney spar with Shakur Stevenson. And Shakur was giving him the business. And I know he's better, but I'm just watching it. I'll be like, I love to see that fight because I think
you might see it.
Some people know,
exactly,
some people know what's real. And I'm watching that. I'm like, okay. Interesting.
Well, the thing that I think that we get out of all this, and I think the thing that we've tried to illustrate in the last 3 years is that there are fights to be made. Mm-hmm. They just have to make them. And I think when we see inactivity, when we see guys that don't get the job done or just kind of get thrown by the wayside, it's not because that there's not opportunity there. It's because opportunity has been denied. And I don't know that there's anything that they can do about that. And again, there are guys, again, we'll go to Gary Russell Jr., that have just decided this is how they're going to do things, and that's how they're going to do it. So, you can't push him any further or any faster than you want. He's probably going to fight maybe next year if he has to.
Yeah, once.
Yeah, fight is mandatory and get it out of the way. But that's as long as that's the rules that he has to live by being the champion, that's what he's going to do. And hopefully we'll see the best of him when we do that. We can appreciate that, And again, I throw Adrian Broner in there for some reason. I don't know why, but we look at Adrian Broner and go, if you come to fight, fight. And that's all fine and good. But they're on the opposite ends of the spectrum. We have Gary Russell Jr. says, I'm not going to fight unless I have to. And when I do that, you're going to see a good fight, a good show. I'm going to get paid and move on from there. And then we have other fighters in between there that are like, how do I get to where I want to go if they don't put me in there with people? How did we end up with, I want to say Pacquiao Horn? Because they had to do something. They had to make a fight some kind of way, so they made it. Right. So, but there are so many other fights they could have had. Why didn't they make that? And I think with what we're hoping we can do, basically we're proposing what Charles has said all along, some form of tournament. We're just not doing it in a formalized way anymore, but it's still that same basic thing. You fight this guy, he fights that guy, then boom, boom, boom. Now it's a bracket kind of thing. I don't know how else they go about it as long as we have the 3.5 bodies that we've been talking about for the last however many years doing what they do. And then 1,700 promoters. For those who don't know, let's say you're trying to get credentials to the fight this weekend, the Jojo Diaz Lopez fight. Let's say that you're trying to do that. Do you know how many hoops you have to go through? How many people are promoting this fight? How many people are part of this fight? If you aren't part of this business, wow, you will be surprised how many people have their hands in this fight. And it's not always a bad thing, but that's the way it is. And you're like, who do I talk to? How do I find information? Who knows anything that's going on? And that's part of, I'm getting on my soapbox here, that's part of the problem with what's going on with boxing. If you want to go see the Hawks play the Suns and it's being played in Atlanta, you go to Atlanta. You say, hey, Hawks people, I want tickets. It's not that hard. This is a completely different thing, and this is the problem we have with boxing. That could be another story for another time, but you guys know, Charles, you've got all these credentials here. You just didn't make one phone call and get those credentials. It would have been nice if you could have.
You got to put work in.
You got to put work in, right?
You got to put work in, and you got to show that you're worthy of covering it, and then you know what the hell you're doing. Because think about it this way. I've been to a couple Super Bowls too. Everybody in the world that's in the media wants to go to this event. Everybody. And they want to go when it's big time. And then there's like anything else. There's a level, there's a cut. And certain people get in but the little guy, there's a level, cut level. The question is, can you be included above the line?
Right. And the thing is, John, as it's not just covering the fights, but it's how many people are involved in it. And even if it's something local, it's not like you go, I want to go talk to this guy and find out about this event. It's not that simple, is it?
It was simpler about 10 years ago when I was first doing it. It's changed quite a bit. You can't get to the fighters like you used to. They have so many representatives that unless you're fortunate enough to get a phone number, then you can leave a message and it doesn't even mean that you're ever going to get anybody. I don't know why it's gotten that difficult. Maybe they want to be protected more from the media. Sometimes I don't blame them. I mean, the few fighters that I've talked to pretty much despise the media. And so you have to build up a trust with them, and then you get a reputation in the business that you're okay. But that was years ago. Like I said, I don't really know now. I do know that when I went to LA to see Jojo Diaz, it was a different. Now I actually know the people at Golden Boy, and they know me, so that's easier for me in that respect. But if I was a new guy trying to get a credential, I know exactly what you mean, Frank. That it's a different thing. But let me say this about Ugas. Smiling right now because Ugas is an intriguing guy. Ugas is Winky Wright and Luis Ortiz mixed into one. You don't hear, again, I love this.
Yeah.
Who is calling out Ugas? Nobody. Why? Because the guy is hard to fight. You don't want to fight a guy like that. You know, he is awkward, he is long, he is tough, he is determined. So, yeah, I just had to say this because Charles said Boots and Ugas. That would be a great fight because that would be tough for Boots. He would be facing a guy that would be doing things that he's never seen. If you want to put him in there and let him see what happens, that's very intriguing. But Ugas is a scary guy as far as I'm concerned. You don't hear Terrence Crawford talking about Ugas.
Right.
You don't hear Errol Spence talking about Ugas. The only guy who fought him were two guys, Sean Porter and Manny Pacquiao. I've said a lot of times, and you guys know I love Sean, but Sean didn't win that fight. Ugas did. He got the decision, but Ugas won that fight. So Ugas is one of those guys, and he's feeling it. He's not getting any respect. So I want him to get respect. He earned it. I mean, guy's been around forever. He's 35. No one gave him a free pass. I mean, he did everything through hard work and determination. His career was almost over. I mean, I could go on and on. Didn't mean to segue to that, Frank, but I was waiting to say something about Ugas. You went into the credential stuff. But, yeah, I want to see that. But real fast, back to the credentials. Yeah, it's different. It's harder. I don't really know why. You would think with the way boxing is now that they would make those things easier for people, but maybe they're tired of the internet folk getting in there and sometimes being slobs and all that. I mean, I really don't know. I don't want to speculate, but it's a different animal now than when I started doing this about 13 years ago. I don't know when it started changing. Maybe the pandemic changed it, but you're right. It is different. Like this fight in Mandalay or in Vegas at the MGM Grand, right? These Saturday, Jojo Diaz. I mean, Devin Haney and Jojo Diaz. You go through Golden Boy to get the credential. That would be the thing. You can go on their website and request a credential. If they don't know you, there's no way you're going to get it.
Right. And my point wasn't necessarily for credentials. It's just understanding the business of what's going on. You know, it used to be, it was Don King Productions, and you knew somehow Don King was involved. In this one, you look, it's Golden Boy, it's this, it's Matchroom, it's blah, blah. You get like 7 different people involved in the production of this fight. And you're like, if they can't even get this part of it right, how can they put on a great event? As I was talking, I just went to the Duke Gonzaga basketball game, Continental Tire. Well, I don't know who Continental Tire is, but there's one production company of doing it for Continental Tire. Boom, there's the arena, you go, and that's it. So if you want to buy tickets, you go to T-Mobile, you buy tickets, you go in. Not a problem. With all these other things that are going on now, you have so many different entities involved. As Charles has said any number of times, we have too many people messing with stuff. How do we figure out how to run it? If you can't run the fight, you can't run the organization, you can't run the belts, it is too much. And I don't know if it's like, so with the pandemic, has it gotten worse or has it gotten
worse?
Ridiculous, yeah.
You make Richard Schaefer the boxing commissioner.
I have no problem with that, Charles.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what it is. I think part of it, though, is with all these entities, now there's to the point where people are like, you had too many people just coming out the street trying to do this, right? I mean, the craft of being a journalist is something, there's a time to talk about going to school. Even if you don't go to school, let's say, for instance, you didn't go to school to be a journalist. That's fine. You at least have to then at that point, go to work and start practicing the craft. You got to improve your writing. And that's what that does over time. So, it's not just because you have a journalism degree, you can become a writer. A lot of people have never been to journalism school, but they provide great articles. You got to prove it. And once you prove it, then you can show yourself. But then there are a number of individuals that are, since the video craze thing has jumped up, they're going around following fighters around and asking questions out the blue, either coming out the bathroom and the restroom and out of a cafe. And some of it's decent. Some of it is almost like it's raggedy. So there's so much muckety muck involved that they almost have to kind of, weed through the madness and see what's real. So that's why I tell my younger counterparts that come to me and ask me questions about this. I tell them, if you're real with the business will be real with you. You come in professional, handle positive things, show them your work is solid, 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to get in. But there's so many people just picking up a microphone going, I'm here because I live in Las Vegas and I can go talk to somebody.
Hey, that's me.
You know what I mean? But you got to be professional, though. You have to be professional. That goes a long way. And then, two, when you're talking to the fighters, if they know that they can count on you to be discreet, handle the business, and say what you got to say and be fair and be a regular guy and not be starstruck, that's how you oftentimes, even with the golden boys of the world, you got to put it out there. You got to show them what you do. Let them tell you no when you have qualified work that you're doing. 9 times out of 10, they want you in the building because they want you promoting what they do.
Well, you know, the interesting thing about all of this is that there's more to boxing, I think, than boxing as opposed to there is to Major League Baseball and baseball or NBA basketball and basketball. There is more to the conflagration of incredulity. I'm trying to think of words that work here because there's so much crud that we've got to get through to put on one match, one fight, which is just amazing. And because it's such a simple, straightforward sport, you would think that the business of it would be simple and straightforward too. And it's not. And it's really weird. And it's not just from the journalist part of it, but from the perspective of sitting there and where's the fight come on? Well, this one's on ESPN. Oh, this one's on ESPN Plus. Was that ESPN Plus the app? No, that's ESPN pay-per-view. Well, no, this one's on DAZN. Well, if you're following it, you know where to find the fight each week. But sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. And sometimes you're thinking, well, this one's coming on Fox. Well, that's PBC, but the PBC Fox event, this one is going to be over here. Like, I don't know. Where am I finding the fight? And this is this a top ranked boxer? Is this a golden boy boxer? Is this somebody? No, this was Matchroom, and this was like, who cares? I want them to fight. You don't know who the agent for Tom Brady is. I mean, you might, but you don't care. You don't know who the agent for Javier Baez is. You might, but you don't care. Here, the agent, you have to know who they are in order to be able to find where they're going to fight, who they're going to fight. I think it's a little ridiculous myself, but that's the landscape we're in. So having said that, completely segued away from everything, John, close the show. I don't know what else to do with that because it's just I just keep seeing these obstacles in what we talk about, what should be good fights and what could be good fights. And then there are these obstacles in the way, and I don't know how to get around it or even how to talk about it anymore.
To go total cliche, it's the classic, there's too many cooks in the kitchen. And too many cooks are overcooking things or not cooking them at all. And it's hurting the sport badly. And this past weekend was a good weekend for boxing. We haven't even talked about Fulton and Figueroa. Fulton and Figueroa was a war, if you guys saw that fight. That was an entertainment. I was going, whoa, I wasn't writing about that one, so I was able to just sit back and just enjoy it. You got two conflicting styles, two gutsy guys. They were what boxing is all about. You can debate all day who won. I had no problem with it being a draw. I didn't even want to see a winner. I didn't care. I would have been either way. I like Fulton, and I had picked him in a thing, so I always want to be right, as you guys know. So he got it. So okay. But Figueroa is a gutsy dude too, and that was what boxing is supposed to be. You match up two fighters, undefeated or close to undefeated, talented, alternate styles, and it turned out to be just as predicted, a brilliant fight. And then you had Lopez and Kambosos. So somehow when the boxing cooks get out of the way, the what is ever created by the cooks can turn out to be really good when they finally get down to business and do it right. So that's the part that drives me crazy, Frank, is we have a great sport here. It's dying for people to do it right, to make the fights. And instead, and I think, Frank, Charles, it's because of money. I think money I always blame money. Money's the root of all evil. It gets in the way. You get all these promoters that think they know more than anyone else. It mucks it up, and not everybody can be Canelo. So, right? So and unfortunately, it hurts the sport. So I don't like it when these guys go, well, I don't know what's wrong. It's like, well, why don't you look in the mirror?
Right.
You know, you're causing the problem. So don't blame others. it's real simple, but they've made it really complicated. And that, because if you were to ask Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney, Kurt Stevenson, Teofimo, Kambosos, Gervonta Davis, who do you want to fight? And they all say the same thing. I want to fight the top guys. So I don't really blame them. So we know who to blame. And it's not, what'll happen, Frank, is we'll get these fights occasionally where we could get them. And I want to say back in the Stone Age when I was younger, we got them pretty routinely.
Right.
And that's might be more why boxing was huge. But of course we had Muhammad Ali in those days and he was boxing. But it could certainly help. Because all you got to do is look at the past weekend. Look at the response to the past weekend with those two fights. That's very positive. Use that as an example, but you're always going to have people that are going to mess it up, unfortunately. And that's what I said about half jokingly about a commissioner. If they had a commissioner, a boxing commissioner, who said, no, I'm vetoing this. You're not fighting him. You're fighting him.
Yeah.
Then you might have some more uniform success. But instead, the way it is, it's haphazard, and we know it. 2021 has been a pretty good year in boxing. We had some pretty good fights. We had some huge upsets. So it hasn't been bad. It's just, unfortunately, the promoters, the managers, the networks, they muck it up, and it's very frustrating.
Well, I'm going to ask this question. Charles, was Fulton Figueroa for a title?
I think it was. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Where was that fight held?
What was it, John? Was it in Vegas?
Drawing a plate too.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, right. I mean, it was.
Do me a favor. Somebody look it up. Somebody look it up, and we're going to shock people here.
I'm looking it up. Here it comes.
It was on the undercard, wasn't it? What was on the undercard? Was it not?
No, it was not. It was not. It was a headline fight.
Oh.
Okay, it was.
Hold on, people. This is going to blow you away.
I know what you're talking about, Frank. I just can't remember. It was. Yeah, it was. Wasn't it like in where you live, Frank?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
It was.
And do you know how many people knew about that fight in this town?
Nobody.
Zero.
Yeah.
Zero. Now there's a lot that was going on this weekend during the time of that fight. I'll give you that. Right. But I saw one signboard in the middle of a casino for a month. I saw one board promoting that. One. It was on the board of, UFC fight, boxing, baseball, basketball, whatever. It was on the sportsbook sign, on the tote boards. That's it.
Right.
Now, if you look what the venue is, I don't even know what that venue is.
I'm looking for that right now.
Yeah, I don't even know where that venue is. So what I'm saying, and now if you look up and see, that was for this belt, that belt, whatever.
122 pounds, yeah.
Yeah.
In Las Vegas, Nevada.
Yeah, super bantamweight. But see, here's the thing. We know for the longest time that people have always overlooked the smaller guys.
Right.
I mean, that's 122 pounds. So you had Fulton versus Figueroa. And John said it was a masterful fight. Might have been fight of the year. And when I watched the fight, I was looking like, okay, another 122. Here we go. And when I watched it through, I went back even and looked at it in its entirety. First thing that came to my mind was, I'll be damned, it's Pacquiao Marquez 1. That's the first thing that came
right,
to mind.
Exactly.
And I was intrigued.
Good, yeah.
Yeah, it was. I was intrigued because I'm watching, I was like, oh. And you heard Figueroa saying he got robbed. And I can see why he would say that. But I think that when you look at it, that Fulton did the most damage. The left hooks and the uppercuts were damaging. While Figueroa was busy, it was so entertaining that it made you, I suggest, if you are a boxing fan, like I told you all the time, watch Pacquiao Marquez 1. If you've never seen it, you need to watch Fulton versus Figueroa because it was that damn good. It was worthwhile.
There was.
But I don't think I'm gonna throw that too. I love it at 122. But the first thing that came to my mind was because they're saying that Figueroa is probably going to move up because he thinks he's going to get robbed again. So Fulton stay where he is. I mean, I like to give y'all a little trinket, certain future boxing things to think about. Let's go on and make this whole then. Let's go ahead and make this whole. Fulton is the guy now. Let's bring that monster up. I'm gonna leave y'all.
Yeah, I knew you were gonna say anyway.
Right. Okay. All right. Yeah. So let me get in the middle of this real quick, and then we'll jump to the good part. Okay. So this fight was at 122 pounds.
Park Theater, right?
Park Theater, which is that used to be the Monte Carlo. So right next to T-Mobile Arena is the Park Hotel or Park Resort or whatever. So it's in a place that, as far as I know, is a theater. It's not a venue. Now, how many boxing venues are there in Las Vegas? About 27. Now we have 28. Why was it in one of the other places? It was on Showtime pay-per-view. Did anyone know that? No. All these factors that go into this, we don't know what the heck is going on. And I am literally right now, where I'm sitting right now, I'm about maybe 400 yards away from where that fight was held. And I did not know. I mean, I knew because I'm here. But I did not know of anyone in this town. There are people walking around with Duke shirts on, Gonzaga shirts on. They were here for all the stuff that was going on before. Arizona. I saw people with Chaminade shirts from the Maui Classic that was here. I did not see one person here representing Figueroa or Fulton at all. I do not know of anyone that went to the fight. And again, I walked past that to go to the basketball game, and I did not see anyone going this way to go to the fight. My point is, you have a possible fight of the year candidate, and this is the end of the year, so you're going to make sure that decision pretty soon, and no one knew about it. And that's just a shame, because it's not like no one knows who these fighters are. It's not like they just brought somebody out of the blue and said, let's make a fight. You've got two guys that are champion worthy, and nothing happened. So again, Charles' point is accurate. We've hopefully established these guys. Let's bring the monster into the mix and see what's going on. But that's what we have to end up doing. It's like you have to bring the names in instead of being able to promote the fight for the fight itself. And this is the conundrum. We're always saying just make fights. Yes, so they just made a fight, which was great. They just made a fight and didn't tell anybody about it.
Yeah, Frank, and maybe the reason they didn't go to the MGM Grand or whatever, they just had Crawford and Porter at Mandalay, right? So that would have been 2 weekends in a row, and then maybe the cost was too much because it's Figueroa Fulton. Most people are going, who?
Right.
So they thought the Park Theater was probably cheaper to do everything they had to do, right? And I don't know what the attendance was, but I think I remember I was kind of trying to scan. It didn't look like there was a lot of people in this, maybe 5,000 or 6,000 maybe.
Right, I doubt that, but right.
What that is, it's tragic because these two guys fought their hearts out.
Right.
I mean, Lopez and Kambosos did too, and that's the thing when you have two big fights on the same night. That can really hurt. It can really hurt Lopez and Kambosos because everybody knows Teofimo because of Lomachenko and all his PR stuff. But Fulton and Figueroa really below the radar. You talk about, Figueroa is another guy that always brings it, and I only see Fulton a little bit. I was more impressed with him because he had to dig down. That guy was on him like flies on you-know-what, and he had to dig down, and he was sharp. And Figueroa, he was the guy moving forward, so he thinks he was robbed. He said it was a robbery. No, it wasn't a robbery. It definitely could have been a draw. I wouldn't have a problem with that, but I thought Fulton won. I thought he edged him. But it was just the heavier hitter versus the sharp, quicker, more athletic guy. So that's what made it so fascinating to watch, because two different styles. And Fulton was fighting Figueroa's fight. He was his trainer kept saying, "You don't have to fight this guy this way." Yeah, I know. And then you go on and do it. But it really was what boxing is supposed to be. And it's tragic that they knew, obviously, the marketing people, that nobody really cared. So they're going to put it on Showtime. They're going to broadcast it, but they know the ratings are going to be low, and they're not going to have a lot. Yeah, they're not going to have a lot of people. Now, would it have helped if they hadn't had it on the same night? Maybe. But would it have helped if they had waited? But you see, the next few weeks are all full with boxing. We got this Saturday, and the next Saturday we got Lomachenko, and the following Saturday we got it. So they had to put it on, and they had planned it for months. That part I don't get, though, Frank. You said there was one sign. I don't know why. Well, okay, maybe I do. Maybe I just said it. I don't think it's going to matter. Most people are going to look up and see that sign and go, "Ooh,"
right,
and move on. So maybe that's the big problem nowadays in boxing. One of the problems.
I don't know, but it's something that I think we can tackle. We can try. We do what we can, and we try and make sure people see what's going on. Because, again, it's out there. And you use the phrase boxing dying, and not in the way that I used it before, but still the same kind of look at it. It's like, it's not dying. And Charles convinced me that a couple of years ago. But it's not thriving the way it used to, and the way that it should. And again, you have more options. You've got UFC. Hell, you got the USFL coming back. So there's all kinds of things you have to think about. But when we have these things right here in front of us, again, literally in front of me or to the side, we should know about it. So, all right. So John unsuccessfully closed the show. So Charles, it's your turn.
All right. Well, I mean, just stay tuned. A lot of great fights coming up. I'm trying to bring you some other information that others may not be expanding upon. So stay tuned. Come on back. Tell a friend. And then if you think you know better, give us a call. I'm waiting on you.
Once again, broadcasting live from the OG theaters, or studios, or whatever.
Named after himself, Charles. Can you believe it? He named it after himself.
I took it, and I now own it. So there. Later, folks.